Hello, listener. You are not going to believe what this insider has to reveal about the medical system around the world. Isn't that right, Andy?
Yeah, he wasn't exactly a clean, wasn't exactly a supporter of my sunscreen usage, to say the least. I think his views on the sun and sun exposure were particularly against the grain of what you might expect for a doctor. Is that fair to say?
It is, although I'm going to take credit for this one, Andy. I have been banging the drum on the anti-sunscreen myth, we'll call it. So we should say Dr. Torkil Færø is our guest today. He is the author of The Pulse Cure, a runaway hit book in Norway and around the world. And he's a medical doctor, and he shares some of the things that you will not hear on regular TV, mainstream advice. He really does support the sort of biohacker movement that a lot of our guests have been championing. And we get into all sorts of things that I think you are going to love, listener.
Yeah, when was the last time your doctor prescribed a pilgrimage, for example?
Yes, probably 1,000 years ago, maybe.
Possibly, yeah.
2,000 years ago.
Likely none of our listeners then.
Yeah, probably not, unless they're real biohackers and they've been living for 1,000 years. But yeah, what else do we get into, Andy? What else are the most surprising
I think the dietary
things?
stuff was very interesting. The fasting or fasting mimicking diets, calorie intake, the type of food he has, when he has it, I thought was really, really interesting to hear as well. Probably not as many calories as the 2,500 or whatever it is we're told. And also just, mimicking, perhaps let's call them simpler times.
Yeah, and Torkil is a real expert on tracking. So we talk about what is the best device to track, how you can use metrics like your heart rate variability to predict disease, catch disease early, as well as optimizing your health to get the most out of your fitness and your social situations, things that you may not associate with health.
Yeah, and I think the increase in wearing, wearables is noticeable. But actually, do you know what that is telling you?
Absolutely. All right. Well, enjoy, listener. This is going to be a great episode with a really top class guest, a very well credentialed, a proper medical doctor with all sorts of experience and a really nice holistic view. So here we go. Hey everyone, are you ready to kickstart your health journey and experience true transformation? Let me introduce you to a brand new program I'm thrilled to be a part of called Momentum, created in collaboration with Runga. Momentum is a 12-week immersive coaching program designed to guide you through every aspect of health transformation, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual. Think of it as the foundation you need to build a life of limitless energy, resilience, and personal power. Now, you might be wondering what sets Momentum apart. Well, the core of this program is breath work, rooted in the clinical trial I conducted for my PhD. This trial showed breathwork's incredible ability to reduce anxiety with a large effect size and statistical significance, making it a true game changer in mental health. With Momentum, you get the best of both worlds. Live monthly breathwork ceremonies that allow you to experience these benefits firsthand, and a full library of recorded sessions. This means you can learn at your own pace on your own schedule from anywhere around the world. Plus, to keep you supported and inspired, we're including live support calls with our elite team. Momentum is about making you the best version of yourself in just 90 days, and Runga's expert coaching is designed to help you achieve exactly that. To get started, visit runga.co and join us in building the foundation for a healthier, more fulfilled you. The world is moving faster than ever. Don't wait to bring your inner world up to speed. Join today by going to runga.co/momentum.
Torkil, welcome to the show. Now, you've traveled over 80 countries and you've spoken about the importance of pilgrimage. Can you share why you believe pilgrimage is so important for both mental and physical health?
Yeah, pilgrimage is probably my favorite way of traveling, actually. You come into a town on foot. You spend time the day out in nature. You spend the time alone often, even if you're walking with your family or a friend. You will walk naturally part of it alone in your own thoughts. When you're walking in the rhythm of your gait, then I find that my thoughts will flow more naturally, and I will, just be in a kind of creative mode, getting the distance from my normal life and kind of think very differently. And I've done the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela twice, and there's also one in Norway. I walked with a friend. We made documentaries from both of these trips. And I walked with my family to Rome, and even also in Palestine, I walked for 2 weeks with my family from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And I'm not a Christian, so I do it maybe more for kind of spiritual reasons in general. So I just find that and you will meet people that are out with the same aim, So I find so many interesting people there, and it's such a good way when you want to change your life to have this huge gap that I think you need to walk for maybe a month or maybe even more, because the most important thing is the time in the middle there. When it's such a long time, a week or 10 days since you started the trip, and the end of it is still far away. And that I find those 2 weeks there in the middle is essential. So many people ask me, can I do it, 10 days and then 10 days and so on and split it up? But okay, if you don't have any other choice, you could do that. But I would mainly go for a very long walk, So that is some of my thoughts about it.
I remember I went to, do you know Rupert Sheldrake? He's a sort of Oxford biologist, and he also talks about other things like, The Science Delusion is his big book, but he did a big book on the sort of the commonalities between all religions, and one of them was pilgrimage. Pretty much every religion recommends or prescribes pilgrimage. And yeah, there's a lot of science behind that, but I like how you said there, if you want to change your life. What do you think it is about pilgrimages that helps people change their lives?
I would say everything, because your physiology is probably at the top, so, and probably the pilgrimages from ancient times that after you had been on such a trip, you would come home invigorated and you would feel more energy and you will feel healthier, and your mitochondria are better, your brain works better. So there's probably some of the reason why pilgrimages are so nice. And it's also a spiritual journey, particularly the one in Spain, I would think, because it's such a tradition also. So you're kind of walking in the footsteps of others. You can feel this energy from all the others that have been walking there for like 1,000 years. So I think there's this spiritual connection also.
Can you give us a little bit of a clue as to what the insights you get in the middle of that journey then? Is it just that you're so far from the beginning and so far from the end? That's the feeling itself?
Yeah. So you're already into this rhythm. You are rid of the worst, pain from walking. And you have kind of got it into the rhythm. And you can kind of, it's like you going up in a hot air balloon and seeing your life from a distance, kind of free from expectations that you're used to back home and the obligations that you often have. So, of course, on my trips, we were working. We were doing interviews with people, asking them why they did it. So that was an added thing for me to get the insight into all the other, we interviewed probably 2 pilgrims every day, and got the insight into why they did it. And we actually made, after the films that we made, we doubled the amount of pilgrims from Norway to Santiago, and also kind of opened up the Norwegian one as well, that we found that we actually have a pilgrimage at our doorsteps that used to be quite huge in the Middle Ages and then disappeared, with Protestantism and all of this around the 15th century. So it's been nice to have a part in that. So before I wrote the Pulse Cure, these films that we made was kind of my contribution to the public health, to keep people healthy in that way.
Yeah, I think walking is such a key part of it. Obviously, people just think, oh, walking just gets you from A to B. But there's the psychotherapy EMDR, eye movement reprocessing and depersonalization. And that was developed here in the hills of California, where this therapist, Francine Shapiro, just noticed when people are walking, they have these lateral eye movements because they're looking at the ground, looking where to place their feet. And she found that her clients were more able to process difficult emotions. And then she invented this EMDR. So I wonder if there's a kind of EMDR pilgrimages.
Probably. And once you scan your surroundings, like that is also healthy. So everything we do that is reminiscent of the way we used to live in the ancient times, that is good for us for some reason. And probably the thing that you can scan your horizon and that you have the peripheral vision all over is probably also very healthy. Of course, also you're outside in the sun, and that is super important. We see more and more research, from the UK also, and from the biobank study that the sunshine is really important for us. And particularly the infrared, half of the sunshine energy is from the infrared spectrum. And when you're walking out in the forest and the woods, the infrared will be reflected from the trees towards you, So you kind of get a full dose on everything you can think of, you will get vitalized on such a trip. Also, you have the phytochemicals from the trees that we inhale and that works together with our immune system. And so everything strengthens us. So it's no wonder that the people came back from a pilgrimage looking healthier, and of course, that inspired other people to do the same. So
yeah, there's obviously a lot of physical benefits, and also the mental stuff. I think, like you said, there change is so difficult to get someone to change. When someone's stuck in a rut, whatever it is, they're obese and they want to stop their eating but they can't, or they're smoking and they want to stop smoking. The psychology of change is such you can go so deep into it, and so many people have so many different pathways to it. Pilgrimage, I guess, is one. Breath work would be another one. Therapy would be another one. But I still don't feel like anyone's really cracked it. Anyone can say this is how you make someone change, but we have to go through these really elaborate processes like ayahuasca ceremonies or month-long pilgrimages just to get us to change our minds. But moving on to your book, The Pulse Cure. So we talked earlier, we've all got Oura rings on here, and I'm sure most of our listeners know what HRV is. But could you just start us off with some of the basics of the Pulse Cure, why it's important to track our pulse, and what HRV is?
Yeah, so HRV, heart rate variability, is the variation between heartbeats. And it's quite beautiful, almost touching for a doctor, that what we can read out of our heartbeats compared to our breath, that is what can tell us so much about the physiology, the stress balance in our systems. And the reason for that is that if we are in the parasympathetic mode of the autonomic nervous system, the restful mode, the recovery mode, then when we breathe in, the heart rate goes up a little bit because there's more oxygen in the lungs and the heart kind of pushes through a bit faster. And then when we breathe out and there's less oxygen in the lungs, the heart will relax a little bit, measured in milliseconds, and we can see that difference with our wearables. But if you are in the stressed mode, then the heart will beat like a metronome, very steadily like a clock. And the wearables will detect this difference from the deep restful state and until a very, very stressful state in the moment, and also accumulated throughout the day and night. And will, through artificial intelligence, through the millions of people using these devices now, they will give you an estimate of if your stress balance is sustainable or not, or if you will, because around 80% of the diseases that we treat as doctors these days have a root cause in too much stress that will lead to a chronic low-grade inflammation. And the stress will come from many sources, not just mental stress that we would think of as stress, in everyday language, but once you start tracking it, as you probably surely have seen, the diet will affect it, your physical fitness will affect it, alcohol, and so many things. Altitude, if you go up to the mountains, it will affect the heart rate variability. So it's kind of a lot of the detective work to do, because the heart will respond to any demand, and it will also respond to any de-stressing activity that you would do, like breath work or cold plunges or meditation or what have you. And so the heart is kind of the control center, taking in information and also giving information for us to be able to have this window into our physiology that is so super important. And because we don't really have this sense throughout history, we never needed this sense for our own state. That wasn't the trouble. Our threats came from the outside, from animals, from enemies, from, poisoned, contaminated food and such things. But it's only in the last decades or last, 40, 50 years that our inner state, our inner stress is what's threatening our health and longevity. So that is why this is kind of a substitute for the senses that we never needed to develop in history.
What might we be doing to stress our bodies that we might not even be aware of?
The things that I was not aware of, that was the stress of alcohol. I thought that alcohol would be a good way to wind down and be calm, to sleep well. And of course, anybody with an Oura ring can tell you that is really not true. I would never have imagined that food could stress, that something that I was eating would result in a difference in my heart rate. I would not imagine that fasting would be so effective to stay in the recovery mode. And also the cold, the temperature, that the body is so responsive to temperature, both in heat and in cold, that we can kind of hack our systems and also become stronger, more resilient through exposing ourselves to temperature changes, So if we're too comfortable, we have this comfort crisis, So if we're too comfortable and not pushing ourselves, we just become weaker and less resilient, and will not tolerate as much loads on our systems.
Yeah, The Comfort Crisis is one of my favorite books.
Yeah, I love that one.
In your book, you talked about social situations as well, and it's sort of introversion and extroversion. Can you tell us more about, how social situations affect your recovery?
Yeah, I'm quite boring when it comes to social situations and what happens to my nervous system, because that's pretty stable. But what has been very interesting, because so many people contact me, this book has been just a huge bestseller in Norway for 2 years now. I'm still in this kind of tornado of attention, and I was on TV earlier today on live TV, and so it's just been this huge success. So I get so many messages from people, and quite a few of them tell me that they used to think they're introverts, or they are introverts, but they would think that being together with people was stressful and being alone was not stressful. But they can see on their Garmin watches, this would be harder to see on your Oura ring though. They can see on their Garmin watches that being together with people is actually not stressful. And then suddenly they become more social because they see that it really relaxes them, shown in the heart rate. And that is probably because maybe they were stressed in a kind of mental way, but their heart rate that will relax once you are together with people will tell a different story. And then they allowed themselves to be more social and became happier, as a consequence of that. So that is very interesting, I find.
Yeah, I found that surprisingly when I initially, the first time I got this insight was when Andy and I went on a trip to Phoenix, and I shared a room with our friend Ollie. And even though we'd been partying, my HRV and sleep were phenomenally high. And then I took another trip with Ollie and his family. We went skiing, and I was like, oh my God, my sleep and my HRV are phenomenally high. Whenever I'm around Ollie, my HRV goes really high. Then I realized it wasn't Ollie. It was just friends. When I felt safe with friends, when I had friends over to stay, my sleep efficiency would go way up. And I think it's just, having another body there helped me relax.
Yeah, absolutely. And people contact me also that they can see that with certain colleagues, they are stressed, and with other ones, they can do exactly the same job, and they're not stressed, And some of them have asked their bosses, could you adjust the time I spend with these people, and have gotten approval for that. And others have told me that, okay, there was no choice here. I cannot quit my job, but I take it upon myself to deal with this in a better way. Now that I can see the stress level that this person causes me, I can think different ways and take it as a challenge to try to think about it and deal with it in a different way that will make my nervous system relax more.
Mm. And as well as health optimization, is it possible, you are a general practitioner, doctor, I'm right in saying that, disease detection, can you use this kind of data to look for that, and what should people be looking for?
Absolutely. You can see, the common infections you would easily see, and usually 1 day or two before you feel the symptoms, you can see it on your device, whether that would be COVID or urinary infection or pneumonia or whatever. You would also be able to see more clearly the effect of a surgery, for example, how long time it will last, the repair process. But even more interestingly, you would also be able to see like cancer. I know at least 6-7 persons that has written to me and said that they came to a point where they could see their HRV dropping and they did everything right and they could not explain it, and went to their doctors and sure enough, it was a cancer that caused it. Because a disease like cancer that the body really has to fight very hard against will be visible in the heart rate. So, and you can Google heart rate variability and cancer and different cancer forms and prognosis, risk of relapse, and all these kind of things. And there's tons of research showing the connection to cancer and heart disease and all this Parkinson, dementia, and all these diseases that kills us really. So 9 out of the 10 deadliest diseases in the US has an association with heart rate variability. So absolutely, this is something that is very useful. And the good thing is that people will have the control themselves. They don't have to wait until they have to go to the doctor. The patient's delay can be very long, that they will hope for the best and think that the symptoms are not so dangerous. But probably once you see it on your watch that here, okay, there's something going on here, then it's much easier to contact the doctor. And of course, they can see it is more serious, the conditions, but also see that they are depleted of iron, of vitamin B12, vitamin D, and such things also. So it can also be used for that.
That's fascinating that 9 out of 10 diseases come
Number
from.
10 is road crashes.
HRV is going to help with that. Yeah. So I assume you're encouraging people to get ahead of these things and to monitor this stuff and actually, as you say, catch some of this stuff before they have to come and see you.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes quite visible when you see the results. If your HRV, drops from, say that you have 60 in HRV. I saw it just today when I was on TV, and the other girl could show me the HRV. It dropped from 120 until 70 over time, like in 3 months. It was not just a dip of 1 or 2 days. And then I could, so that's a significant change. There's something wrong. That this is something. It could be she used to have an iron deficiency. It's probably that. But anyway, it's visible. And you can go to your doctor and say that, okay, this is a problem. We have to find out what's the cause of this.
And then with HRV, what have you found are the most effective things for improving it?
That would be that would be the combination of things. That would be to do something about your sleep, something about your diet, something about alcohol, making sure that you have some stress management strategy like breath work, cold plunges, meditation, or reading. Reading is very good for many people. So I think it's to do a little bit on all of these different areas, really. I'm not sure if there's one. If you drink a lot of alcohol, that would be the one then. But of course, most biohackers wouldn't do that. So.
Apart from Ben Greenfield, he drinks every day apparently, but he seems fine with it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, in our world, wellness world, there are very many myths and misconceptions. So would you help us dispel a few of the common ones that you've come across?
Yeah, if I can, that would be the first one, of course, would be alcohol. Because when I studied medicine, and this is then 27 years ago, we were advised to have 2 glasses of wine every day, and for women, 1 glass of wine. That was the doctor's orders, And the reason for that was that the people who lived the longest drank that amount of alcohol. But it wasn't the alcohol, we see when you go into the research now that it wasn't the alcohol, but it was that they were more social. They had better relationships. And we, as doctors, would never have thought earlier that relationships had anything to do with heart disease or cancer or autoimmune diseases or anything of that. You could understand that it had something to do with mental disease or suicide risk and such things. But what we find now is that feeling lonely is as dangerous as smoking. There has been research showing that. So probably the reason why these people lived longer with 2 glasses of wine was not the wine in itself, but that they were more social. So of course, now they would say that no alcohol will be benefit for you, for your health. So in itself. So that would be one thing. I'm not sure. It could be, in general, the myths, of the sunshine, that sun is bad for you. It's just a misunderstanding. I think that must be the worst mistake from a collective medical society, that we advise people to stay out of the sun as much as they can, because and that has been because of the fear of melanoma. But from the big biobank study with 400,000 people in the UK now, they have followed over, I think, 11 or 12 years. They can see that the ones with the most sun exposure will have 25% less chance of getting a heart disease and 15% less chance of getting cancer of all causes. And there is not an increased risk for dying of melanoma either. And so I think that the doctors and the society has just been focusing on the fear of getting melanoma and have forgotten to even ask for, may there be some benefits from the sun? They haven't even thought about the concept. They have understood that the sun gives us vitamin D. And then they have thought that, okay, stay out of the sun and take vitamin D. And then, of course, we have learned that you will not get the same benefits from taking vitamin D, because vitamin D is just a biomarker that you have got enough sun exposure. Because you have so many other benefits from the sun. We have storages of nitric oxide below our skin, and the sunshine will release that. And we have in our mitochondria, with the sun exposure, we will get more melatonin, that is an antioxidant. And with the sun exposure, we will increase the effectiveness of cytochrome C oxidase, which will improve the ATP production in the mitochondria. And it's really obvious, of course. An organism developed under the sun in Africa that got pale from moving away from Africa, that such a creature should not be in the sun, is such a logical mistake that it's hard to believe. And now we see the research. There's so much research now that shows this mistake. So my next book that I will start within a month or so will be about the sun exposure. Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. I've been banging that drum for a while, often on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Yes, I really appreciate you with your medical background speaking about this and speaking about the sort of the silo mentality of medicine, how skin doctors just think about skin but they don't think about heart disease and cancer, and we need to be looking at all cause mortality, not just one individual thing. But saying that, there are sort of, in the biohackers world, there are still extremes in that you have someone like Jack Kruse. I don't know if you know him, but he's like he's called like mitochondriacs. He's all about the sun for mitochondria, but he's like, never wear sunscreen, be in the sun 12 hours a day. And if you don't, you know, you're going to be absolutely miserable. And then you have Brian Johnson. Do you know Brian Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I met him the other week. He's very pale. He won't go out in the sun. He checks on his phone the UV levels before he goes outside. He's like, UV's too high. Can't go there. So with Jack Cruz, who looks quite old, his skin looks quite damaged. What are your actual like recommendations for sun exposure? Is there too much? Is there too little? Should we ever wear sunscreen?
I think that we can go back to what the ancients did. They would be in the shade in the middle of the day. So with the most UV exposure, they would stay in the shade, you know, waiting for the sun to go a little bit down and then go hunting or foraging or whatever. So, but I think that probably, you know, just probably an hour or two would be enough. Of just like in many other things, that a little bit takes you almost there. You know, that might well be that 12 hours would be optimal. You know, what did they do? Of course, they were outside and they had nowhere to go. I don't know how long we've had houses or stayed inside the caves, but I would believe that anyone from the cave, I recently visited a cave in Croatia, and you would believe that you wouldn't want to stay inside your cave if there's sunshine outside. You know, why would you? Would have to be there 12 hours every day when it's dark anyway. So you would be out in the sun for 12 hours. So probably that would be even the best amount of sunshine, you know. So that's probable. So staying outside of the sun, that's obviously not a good thing. And I don't think sunscreen would be wise to use either. So it's all of this different of the contents of the sunscreen, you know, that, you know, a lot of women use, you know, for hormone replacement. You just spray your skin twice, and then your hormones are okay. So it shows you how permeable your skin is and how much anything that you put on your skin can affect your system. So of course, when we start using sunscreen on kids, you know, from top to toe, and when they go out, then we're losing something of that. So I don't think that's very smart. So I think it's better to have them exposed for the sun and get their tan in a natural way, so that you will avoid getting a sunburn just by exposing yourself gradually to the sun, and use the melanin in your skin as a natural sunscreen. That's I cannot imagine that this would not be the best option.
What do you think about edible sunscreens? My friend George, we just went on a hike and he ate his sunscreen, and it had a load of ingredients like astaxanthin, vitamin C, and then this other like Peruvian like herbal extract that I'd never heard of. But then I also looked into it, and a lot of the government are trying to ban these edible sunscreens, demand they be taken off the shelf here in California. But have you come across them? Do you think they're any use?
I don't know.
Why are they trying to ban them?
Maybe because they don't work, I would guess.
Right.
Or if you get into conspiracy theories, it's because they want you to have cancer so that you can go spend money on cancer treatments. I don't believe that, but I'm sure someone will be thinking it.
I'd like to go back to something you said earlier, if it's right, Torkil. You mentioned in terms of the alcohol myth and the actual reason why people were living longer is relationships and social interactions. Are there any trends that you're seeing that are quite worrying in the wake of the pandemic, where people are maybe not socializing as much and maybe we've become a bit too much at home and behind a screen?
Yeah, it probably aggravated an already present problem, that people are more staying to themselves. They are more dependent on screens. We get our dopamine kicks from being on the screens and gaming, and all the boys are gaming, you know, and everybody's checking social media instead of meeting each other. And of course, during the pandemic, everything was even worse. So I'm not sure if there was any other way, you know, than to do that. It's, you know, it's the age-old strategy for what to do when a pandemic hits. You must isolate, and otherwise you die, you know. So so as the bodies were piling up outside the hospitals, you know, I'm not sure what else there were to do. But it seems to be a rise in anxiety and depression and loneliness, and the curves seems to have gotten higher, after the pandemic.
Certainly, yeah. Well, over here in the US, Northern European countries like Norway and Sweden, they're sort of mythologized. Everyone just thinks that, if you're slightly left of center, everyone just thinks we should be like Norway and Sweden. And I know that it's sort of seeing things with rose-tinted glasses. But the thing that my sister-in-law lives in Norway, she's just moved there recently. But one of the things I kind of understand about Norwegian people is they're very passionate about the environment. They get outdoors a lot. And Norway has it's seventh in the world for happiness. So I'm wondering what are the secrets to Norwegian happiness? Is it just being outside?
Yeah, it's probably being more outside, but it's probably also it's a well-run democracy. The systems work. I think that has a lot to do with it, and I think so. It's a small society, not much trouble. So I think it must be these things. Yeah. And there's an outdoors life, but that's probably just, 1/3 of the population, I would think, that will regularly go out and be active in nature. Yeah.
Okay. And going back to fitness, one of the things I always notice is people just hear the advice they want to hear. So if there's someone who exercises fanatically 7 days a week, they just hear the advice that exercise is good. And then there's the person who maybe, is overweight, out of shape and lies on the couch all day. They just hear, you need to rest. Rest is really important. So with that myth that more exercise is better, how do you use the technology and the pulse cure to get people on the right track?
Yeah, the good thing about the Garmin watches then in particular, that of course they are developed for fitness, for athletes. That is that they can give you a recovery time. So whenever I go out for a run or do some exercise or a hike or whatever, it will give me the recovery time afterwards. And in that, I can see that, okay, I try to spend as much energy that I will give maybe 24 hours of recovery time, that I don't put more strain on my system than I can recover from until the next day. So that is a way to be able to put not too much load on your system, because I see many people, health enthusiasts, they are exercising way too hard, too long, too intense. We're not made for that either. When we put these wearables on hunter-gatherers that live today, we see that they have 2 to 3 hours of moderate activity with some burst in between of using more force. But in general, they're not really vigorous activity. So if you do, I think there's kind of a sweet spot of maybe probably around 3 or 4 hours a week of moderate exercise. And that is healthy for longevity. And then to get a better VO2 max, then you would have to push even further. But from the 50 percentile of VO2 max and upwards, it's not so much difference in mortality or longevity. And that is a huge step. You have to exercise really hard to get from the 50, from the middle, and then up to the 10% best. That would demand a lot of exercise. And so I don't think that would be worth it. But the worst problem is that if you are among the 25% with the lowest VO2 max, those are the ones that have a problem. So if you just do enough to stay kind of in the middle, you have done enough for the health reason. Of course, you will not win the marathon or the contest, but for your health is better. Because I'm rarely surprised by the longevity of athletes and former athletes when you see the obituaries. They seem to hardly reach the average age. I'm more often a lot more surprised by how early they die than how late they die. I'm always conscious about that when I see athletes when they die.
Can we talk a bit about practical tips for diet? We've had a few dietary experts on the show. Are there any things we need to kind of be mindful of in the modern world?
Yeah, what we see and what we can track on our Garmins is that the usual advice of intermittent fasting and eating real food, not processed food, will also reward you with better heart rate variability. So having a restricted feeding window, eating window of maybe 8, or I would say 6 to 10 hours. I use 6 hours. So 6 to 10 hours would most people would benefit from that, measured both in symptoms and in heart rate variability. And doing also fasting and fasting mimicking diets will also give you a better heart rate variability. So I can see that, Garmin has a body battery system that you can see how if you go up to maybe 80 or 90 during the night, you have kind of charged your physiological battery. And you will see during the day, it will go down to maybe 20, or if you're very stressed, down to 5. But when I am on a fasting mimicking diet, it's totally flat. The body battery stays at the same level and I'm in the parasympathetic mode the whole day. So, and that is very motivating because you're a bit hungry, but when you see the result, the kind of reward for it, it's so much more motivating to do those tough choices, to eat the right food. And you would also see that when you eat, chocolate, candy, crisps, and these kind of things, that even if you are relaxing and watching Netflix in the sofa, your stress level will be high. So you have probably seen that on your Oura rings as well, or?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, especially when I overeat. I think that's, if I eat a big portion, that definitely affects my sleep.
Yeah. The late night meals, that is something most people, once they start tracking, they cut down on alcohol and they cut down on late meals or adjust their meals to an earlier time. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people will find if you have a food intolerance, you will see that your heart rate will go up. So for me, if I eat chili, then my heart rate will be super high, and I'll be exhausted the day after. So it's individual also.
There's a lot of fasting mimicking diets out there. How do you do yours?
There's a Norwegian book on the fasting mimicking diet, inspired by Walter Longo, his system. So I've used that one. So
what does that look like?
I just follow it's just, it's salads, nuts. I'm not a good cook. I wouldn't know what it is. I usually go to these retreats and I get the food served and it's good. Okay. So the main point is probably to keep the proteins low, and then to have maybe 700 calories a day. And that is supposed to give the same autophagy as fasting, water fasting. So, and of course, autophagy is a new concept. We did not learn that in medical school, but it's of course a smart thing that our body has developed, that instead of, and also why all religions have fasting. If all religions have a certain thing in common, it is probably good. And that is what we find then, that if you are fasting, then your body starts recycling the worst senescent zombie cells and use that to build new cells. And those zombie cells are the ones that are on the verge of becoming cancerous and so on. So it's quite important.
Prolon is the main one. Yeah, I keep meaning to do that. I just haven't built up the steam enough for it.
What is that, Rich?
Yeah, it's a kind of self-done fasting mimicking diet where you buy a box and it's just full of like nuts and things like that are about, I think it's about 500 calories a day, and you do that for 5 days. I think they've got some soups and things, and it's just done for you. And yeah, it's quite simple. It's pretty expensive for the amount of food you're getting. You could certainly do it cheaper yourself, but yeah, it's the fact that they've got you guiding throughout.
Interesting. So looking ahead, what do you see as the future of wellness and personalized health?
Yeah, I think at least that people will use these devices a lot more. Because the Pulse Cure is actually still now, to my knowledge, the only guidebook on how to use the wearables in combination with lifestyle strategies. If you know some book that will have this subject, then please tell me, or any other listeners, contact me and tell me, because I would love to read that and learn. But to mine the editor's knowledge, and I try to check it on the Amazon to see if there's any new books. So I don't think that even the biohackers or even the people in general are aware of how much they can get out of their watches, get out of their heart rate variability. And of course, when it's more and more artificial intelligence involved that can combine the knowledge of what you're eating, what you're doing, we are using artificial intelligence for like everything else. Now we need to use it for our own physiology, and just the heart rate and maybe blood sugar will come as well. But just the heart rate, the breath, the temperature, you can tell so much about you. You have kind of 90% of the answers you need already there. So, and the products are already here. So the future is here, we just need to use it, so to speak. So I think the thing is to make people aware of that the future is here, and to be able to use this technology for their benefits. Yeah. And with the artificial intelligence, I think when more of that comes in, because, there are artificial intelligence that you can take a picture of your food and it will register what you have eaten. And once you can take that into your heart rate variability, suddenly it can tell you that, okay, when you eat this and this will be the result. So, for example.
That's very clever. And yeah, we've mentioned the Oura Ring, but you've also mentioned the Garmin. So what's your favorite device?
Yeah, I've tried many different devices. I've had almost 6 devices at the same time at times. So I started out using the ECG monitor for 2 years before I was even aware of that you had the same system in the wearables in the Garmin. And then I could see I've used the Garmin watches and used Polar and Apple Watch. I used the Whoop Band, Oura Ring, and I used the different things. But the Garmin is by far the best. And it's not because of Garmin in itself, but they have bought the Finnish company Firstbeat Analytics. And they have more than 20 years of experience with physiological measurement. So it's their system that really is the difference. They make and present it in a very understandable way so that you can get the most out of the data that you get from the watches, I think. So now that is, of course, if you want to micromanage, if you want to see exactly how much stress a podcast is, or whatever that could stress you, or a fight with your wife, or whatever, you will see. Because with the Oura Ring, you just get the result in the morning. So it's like you go into the supermarket and do a big shopping and you only get the total. You don't get the items in itself. So the Garmin watch is what will give you the different items. You will understand that this costs so much and the cold plunge, gave you so much and so on. So yeah. And Garmin watches are also, and I'm no affiliations, no interest in economical anyway. So, and they have also the cheapest ones. So even with the Vivo Smart 5 that you probably cost, $120, you get 80% of the information out of that. So it's also very accessible for people. And of course, you have the price range, all the way to the top with added benefits on each kind of step along the way. So, and if you have an Apple Watch, which many people have, then if you have the app that is called Athletic, that's a quite good one. So at least the best one I've seen so far for the Apple Watch. It's the combination between Athlete and Analytic, the Athletic app. And other than that, I think what is so good is that there's kind of the big game change is that we take the power from the doctors and the healthcare system and put it into your own hands. And also that we take the shift into waiting until you get sick and then having a way to avoid getting sick. So I think these two changes are very important. And also that there is money in keeping you healthy, because the problem in the healthcare system is that there's too much money in sick people. A system that is the solution to a problem will maintain the problem that it is the solution to, So it's this system and all the money involved in sick people that is the problem. And now there's money in keeping people healthy. And that is quite promising, I think. I'm not sure if you see it the same way.
I do. I'm very happy to hear someone on the inside, a doctor saying that, because generally it's people from the outside criticizing doctors in the medical system. And there's quite a lot of you feel like gatekeeping. When I've seen doctors and, I've told them about the sort of the holistic things I would be doing for my health. They're a bit like, oh no, you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be doing saunas or ice baths or breath work. Just leave it to me, keep paying me, and I'll fix all your problems. But certainly in the US, the medical model is different to the UK, where there's, a supposedly collapsing national healthcare system and there's no money for it. So I can see in the UK, there would be a lot more appetite for preventative medicine, whereas here in the US, it's just all about, the big pharmaceutical companies, it seems.
Yeah. And everything in the Pulse Cure in my book is free. So, sunshine, getting out in nature, fasting is even cheaper, of course. Cold is even cheaper, at least in the UK, but in the US, you have to turn on your aircon, so it might be expensive. And drinking water instead of alcohol and all of these things, it's sunshine, activity, moving, pilgrimages, is all free. And that is also the problem, because there's no money involved. There's no commercial pressure behind it. So it's only after you get sick that there's money involved here. So that's good, because it's accessible to everybody. Even if you don't have any money, you can do the life choices that, according to a big American study of 700,000 people, can give you 24 years more lifetime. So it's not just a couple of years, it's a lot of years. So
that's a really useful
awesome.
study, because some people say, oh, I'm going to spend my life, 10 years in the hyperbaric chamber and the sauna to get 5 years back. It's like, well, you may as well just have those 10 years living your life. But when you say actually it can be up to 24 years, that really makes it sound worth it.
You've sort of preempted our final question there, Torkil, because we were going to ask you for some practical steps from the Pulse Cure to help people with their journey towards a better health. But you preempted that one. So we're going to ask you, we're obviously going to signpost everything, but where can we find you?
You can, my book you can find kind of anywhere. It's a normal book. It's on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles and such, and it's also on Audible. So you can download, and it's an ebook if you use the Kindle. And I also have a website called thepulsecure.com, where you can see a video lecture that I have on how to use the Garmin watches then, and see the graphs and so you can understand it. And I'm on Instagram, Dr. Torkil, Dr. Torkil on Instagram. So I try to put out content there. Also in English, of course, there's a lot of Norwegian there, but I try to translate it and subtitle it into English. And so it's also useful for English-speaking people.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Torkil. This has been fascinating. I'm sure our listeners will love this, and hopefully they'll buy the book.
Yeah, I hope so. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much for your time.
Cheers. All right, welcome back, listener. We hope you enjoyed that. Annie, what are you going to take away from this episode?
Well, first and foremost, what a calming voice of reason. And Richard Blake. I think my main one is that a lot of this is free, and that a lot of this focuses on preemptive measures before health problems occur. So sunshine is free, sleep is free, getting out in nature is free, and it's not often you hear a doctor who's trying to get ahead of some of this stuff so passionately and calmly. So it's widely available. Get out and do it.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he's a doctor and he's not really advocating for the medical system. He's, he's trying to get people to live happy, healthy lives without getting them dependent on, 5 different medications and all those things. I feel like that's such a refreshing take.
And I think that getting ahead of it is actually absolutely essential. As you said quite an unusually good point about the NHS.
Sure.
In terms of we have a system that's creaking in this country, and so anything that can help you get on top of your own health early enough is surely a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think the US dominates the wellness industry, and that the lens they see through things through is, well, the medical system just wants more and more of our money, whereas the rest of the world, it's all taxpayers paying for the sickest people, and that lens is, well, we need more preventative care. So it is surprising to me that the UK doesn't push more preventative care. I know that it was a big step for them to prescribe meditation on the NHS, which is amazing. But yeah, I think they should be doing more evidence-based things. Hopefully we'll get breathwork in there someday. That's my big goal.
Yeah, and if you are a doctor listening, or you know any doctors listening, then perhaps get them to start banging this drum as well, because the research backs it up, and it's really refreshing to see.
Big time. All right. Well, thank you, listener. Thank you, Andy. Where do they find us?
Good question. On Instagram at AndyEsam, at The Breath Geek, richardlblake.com, and all good and bad podcast postcards.
Andy will send you a postcard if you
all
listen.
good and bad postcards and podcast hosting sites.
Yes. And another reminder that I am now free to work. Not free, you have to pay me, but I'm available to work after 4 years in the dusty halls of academia, out ready to breathe you back into wherever
health.
You need to be. Full health. Yes. Yeah. Breathwork sessions for functional breathing and conscious connected breathing online are now available with richardlblake.com.
Do you reckon that's the point where people start turning off when you say, I'm available to work? You can always hear people turning it off.
Yeah, people aren't listening now. We could just say whatever we want, insult whoever we want.
Thanks for listening. If you are still listening, appreciate it.
And, yeah, you're the best.
Thank you, Dr. Torkil.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Torkil. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, listener. Bye-bye.
Bye.